Don't change that dial. It's time for your go-to source for all things entertainment and caffeinated. Now give it up and welcome to the stage, Eva and DJ!
I'm DJ Blockstyle.
And I'm Eva Crow.
And this is the Inks and Lattes podcast, where we're spilling the ink and dishing out drinks. We're both members of the Creative Coffee Cafe Discord network, an amazing place where creatives can come together, chill, bounce ideas, and get support from their fellow creatives. It's an awesome community, and today we're going to feature some work from some of our incredibly talented members.
So last week we talked about the first book in the Alethea's Lament series. Now we're going to tell you about book 2 of the series, Hope Extinguished, Alethea's Lament verse 2 by Cathryn Leigh. Alethea and Aramis try to adjust to their new lives in the Holy City. Alethea focuses on learning all she can from the ancient Lady of Light, while Aramis learns what it is to be a squire. But their constant crossing of paths does little to ease their heartache, for they cannot truly be together. Yet Aramis must continue to protect Alethea as she struggles to overcome the same prejudice that plagued her journey to Arctheos. Will they figure out how to navigate this new place, or will their hearts be torn even further as emotion and prejudice pave the way to disaster?
And when Cathryn's not writing or publishing her stories, she manages the quality aspects of a clinical laboratory by day and her husband, 2 children, and pets by night. Over the course of the years, she's used her free time to learn to ride a motorcycle, earn her black belt in karate with her eldest child, and travel the world with her family. Along with these epic endeavors, she experiments with yarn, fabric, and, of course, words. Hope Extinguished, Alethea's Lament is available on Amazon in Kindle and paperback editions. Snag your copy now and don't forget to leave a review. And just a quick reminder for some of our other CCC related things.
LunaWolfWYO Designs has all kinds of beautiful tumblers, mugs, stemless wine tumblers. They offer the pre-made designs and they also accept custom orders. Owner and creator Vicky did make that special dripping creativity tumbler. Those are still available. They are amazing, and 15% of those sales go back into the Creative Coffee Cafe. So you guys should definitely snag one of those.
And don't forget to visit the Bewitchery, a small online shop that offers candles, spell kits, jewelry, fragrances, and more.
And then Justin at The DM's Guide is still open for TTRPG map making commissions. You can DM him on Instagram at The DM's Guide or reach out to him via his website.
And Aster at Aster's Mystic Bedhead has a shop on coffee. Check out Aster's tiny art and snag your own adorable, one-of-a-kind piece of Aster's tiny art. Again, all the links we talk about can be found in the description. Now it is time for our topic of the week. Today's topic we have named From Breaks to Binge, the evolution of how we watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
I'm
you could
excited
say
for this.
I guess you could say it's almost like we're talking about it from the perspective of both of us. So like from like the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
90s and onward up to then. Obviously it changed from when it first was invented. And actually I
Right.
remember in my first year of broadcasting we actually learned about the evolution of radio and TV and stuff like that, and how it evolved and
Mm-hmm.
how it started and how it got to how it is now. And it was interesting to learn. But I guess we want to talk about our experiences of, because especially like for some of our younger viewers who might not understand what it was
Mm-hmm.
like before in the 80s and 90s, where it was different back then. I'm old enough to remember when I was a kid, um, we had one of those floor model TVs.
Mm-hmm. With
And
the
then it had
knobs.
with the knob, the 2 knobs. So the first knob went to, I think it was 13,
Right.
and then so you, if you wanted to go to any channel over 13, you had to go to, I can't remember what it was now. I think you had to go to like 13 or something like that. And then you had the second knob, which then went to all the higher numbered stations.
Ooh, fancy.
We didn't even have a channel changer. I was the channel changer.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's like one of my like fondest memories growing up that's related to TV, because it really did used to be like a whole thing watching TV at home. Like, I remember every Friday night we had they had a thing called TGIF,
Oh,
and that was something
TGIF.
that, like, yeah, as me, I was born in 89, so I am like, I just barely made it into the 80s, but I'm a 90s kid. And like, I remember every Friday we would sit down as a family collectively, all four
Yep.
of us, and we would watch TGIF. And it had shows depending on the year and all that. There were shows like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Family Matters, Boy Meets World, Step by Step, Sister Sister, like all these like
And
family
Full
wholesome like
House was the one I
sitcoms.
remember. Full
Full
House,
House,
Step
yes.
by Step, Family Matters. I
Mm-hmm.
remember.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember some of the others in that, but yeah, TGIF was big for my family as well. Like my family was the kind of
Mm-hmm.
family where we watched those family oriented kind of shows.
So,
That
yeah.
was what
Yeah,
I
and it
grew
was like a
up
whole
on.
thing.
Yeah, no, it
Yeah,
was
it
a
was like a
whole
whole thing.
yeah.
You would make popcorn and like you guys would like snuggle in to watch TV, and it was like a thing.
And
And
it was
like
great
I
as a
mean, I know that
kid.
people yeah, I know that people probably still do that with their families. I don't know. I don't have kids, but it was different then though. You know what I mean? Like there was set programming and like you only had so many options. Like the TV guide, for example, was the thing. Like people collected TV guides and probably still do. I don't know, is TV guide still even a thing?
That's actually a really
Is that
good
even a thing?
question. I
I'm
don't
gonna Google it
know.
real quick. I'm gonna live Google I'm gonna
I
Google it
mean,
right now.
it did eventually, basically what I would say, it evolved because they had the actual magazines, right? But then eventually,
Mm-hmm.
once cable became a big thing, I remember what they
Mm,
had the TV guide on the station. So there was an actual TV guide station that I could flip to
right.
see what was on each channel. So even at that point, they didn't really need the actual magazine. But although I do remember, I think it was at least in the 2000s, they still had like the TV guide magazine thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you
Yeah,
know what?
it
I
is
just can't
technically still
see
a thing.
really. But it's probably just all online now, right?
Well, it says the TV Guide, the magazine, is still around, technically. But, like, yeah, it's not the same, obviously, because, like, when we were kids, it was like, okay, well, let's see what time Jeopardy's on and what channel it's on.
Hey,
And you
I
had to,
still
like,
do
open it
that.
up and, like, look for Tuesday, or whatever day Jeopardy was. I don't
Jeopardy is
remember.
literally the only program that I watch right now regularly at a specific time where I'm just like, all right, it's 7:30, it's time to watch Jeopardy every Monday to
You
Friday.
know,
That is my thing.
yeah, yeah, we did that for a long time as well, where we would watch like Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. Um, but yeah, like it's crazy when you think about it now, like just even on the scale of like how saturated the TV market is. Because now, like back then, you had to wait, once a week a show came
Mhm.
out,
Yeah.
right? Once a week, you knew what day it came out. Like Dawson's Creek was one for me growing up in the 90s and early 2000s. It was like, okay, Wednesday night, Dawson's Creek is on, I think at 8 o'clock on the WB, I think it was. And like, we knew exactly when it was on, and you watched it every week. And if you missed it one week, oh, forget it. There was no going back.
Well, that's what your
There
yeah,
was
that's
no,
what your friends were for, though. Because that you would like talk to
Mhm.
some of your friends and find out, oh, I missed the show last week. What happened? What happened? And then you'd get the juicy gossip from your friends, right?
hmm Yep,
I,
you would go to school the next day and be like, "Oh, I missed Dawson's Creek last night. What happened?" And they'd be like, "Oh my God, girl." And they would tell you all about it. And you'd be like, dang it. How did I miss it?
And I guess that's what they
But
call
sometimes it just,
appointment TV, right? Because we almost have to make an appointment to actually go see it.
yes.
And so it's going to be on this
hmm
time every week. And I think the advantage of that, because and that's the thing, I don't want to be one of those like older people who just like, oh, things were all better back then, looking back at it with a sense of nostalgia. And in a sense,
hmm
I feel we do that sometimes where we look back at the things and we don't miss the actual thing, we miss how we felt back then. But I
Right.
do think that there is an advantage of having that kind of set appointment TV, of having uh, that thing appear at a particular time so that you can get everyone to watch it at the same time, and then it creates almost like a
Right.
cultural vibe, right, where everyone kind of, it's
Mm-hmm.
what they call like a water cooler kind of show, where after that
Yeah.
episode airs, everyone will be talking about it at work the next day or at school or wherever that they are, be like, man, did you catch that episode of thing last yesterday, and everyone would be talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
right, for especially for like the really popular ones. And I think that's
Right.
what we miss about that with the binging now, is with when it kind of everything comes out at once, as like an entire
Mm-hmm.
season, then it's great to watch it at your leisure. But the problem is you kind of miss that natural kind of progression of every week, and that you can see there are some, like Netflix is the one that really tends to do the binge thing now,
Mm-hmm.
where it
Mm-hmm.
all comes out, every season comes out at once. There's a few I think that might still have the appointment with Netflix, but Netflix, generally speaking, when if it comes out with its shows, it puts it out all at once for the entire season.
Right.
Or in some cases,
That's like
I know with Bridgerton they did like a half and half thing.
hmm Like Fallout was one of those that the old like nostalgic side of me almost wished they would have released an episode at a time
Yes, I'm actually
because
disappointed they
I
didn't.
binged watched it. Yeah, I binged watched it too fast. And I think that's only really a thing for people like us that grew up with that type of TV. Like the younger generations probably don't, I would assume they don't really feel that as hard as we do, where we're like, man, I watched it so fast and like I wish I wouldn't have
Well,
because there was something to like having to wait.
mm,
You know what I mean? Like even like I'm trying to think of a show that
well, it's
was I mean
that
any
build
of
up,
them
right?
really, but yeah, like there was that
You get
there was
that
always
build
that
up of excitement.
cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There was that cliffhanger episode and you'd be like, "Oh my God," and you'd be so mad when the episode ended. And you'd be like, "Now I have to wait a whole week to find out what
Or
happens
the worst, where they
on
end the
Buffy."
season on a cliffhanger, right? Where it's just like, oh, the
Oh,
end
it
of the
was the
season ended on a
worst.
cliffhanger, and you had to wait 3 4 months
Mhm.
in order to find out what happens the next season. And you're like, oh my god,
Yep.
really?
And that it's funny because that almost for me, and again, I don't know if this is because of like our generation, it has almost transferred over in a sense to where I'm now that person where I will often wait to watch a show until there's multiple seasons out because there's no
Yep,
shortage of shows, right?
yep.
And like I did it with Supernatural. Supernatural has been over for a minute. I am just now watching it for the very first time.
I've
And
actually
like
never watched
s-
it yet.
it's so good.
I've heard it's
But
really, really good. There's so many
it's
shows where
seriously
like, oh
so good.
man, like if I decide to binge watch a show, there's so many I could start with. I remember most
Yeah,
shows actually I've ended up like watching long after they've been done.
right. And like
Buffy,
that's
I
kind
end up
of
watching long after it was done.
hmm
I'm trying to think one other
yeah.
one that The Good Place I
Because
actually never
even
watched
like
until it was done.
yeah, like even before streaming was like the way it is now, when it was like in the earlier stages of it, um, there was even that like weird transitional period where like say like Buffy, for example, say that like you missed Buffy, right? You missed the season
Yeah,
finale of season 8 of Buffy or whatever.
yeah.
You had to wait for it to come out on DVD. And
Or
then you
reruns.
could watch it.
The
Or
yeah,
reruns. Oh my
rerun.
God, I
Well,
forgot
yeah,
about reruns.
that's another thing too. So like the really popular ones, you'd end up just seeing
Holy
reruns
crap.
of them all the time. So like Seinfeld reruns would be like, I remember for the
Oh,
longest time
yeah.
it was the Seinfeld reruns,
hmm
it was Friends reruns, it was the really popular
You know,
shows.
it instantly makes me think of that part on Back to the Future where he's like, "Oh, I've seen this one. It's a rerun." And the
Like, what's
uncle's
a
like,
rerun?
"What's a rerun?"
Yeah, right.
And he's just like, "Oh, never mind."
You'll
Yeah,
get
it's
it
just
when you're
like
older.
it's I completely forgot about reruns. That's so weird. Because I like there was a time for me specifically where like and this is a true thing, I did not have home internet or Wi-Fi at all. All I had was internet on my phone, like through my data, up until last year.
Wow.
And I live in the city. Like there was no reason. It's not like I couldn't get it. I just refused to pay for another thing at the
That,
time. And
that's
so
fair.
what I used to do, it was awful. What I used to do was I would get my phone time because I have like a prepaid plan through Straight Talk or whatever.
Okay.
And you got like 20 gigs of hotspot data. And I would literally connect my Xbox to my hotspot on my phone, run the internet through my Xbox, and then I had like X amount of time to watch things. So I'd be like, right, what do we want to watch? Like, we have to make a decision now. There was no like, looking on Netflix for 2 hours to decide what to watch. It was like, okay, we're burning hotspot. Like, and we like just got internet, like Wi-Fi last year, which is crazy now that I think about it.
Other thing I'm thinking too now that kind of just hit me is I think another reason why that kind of thing is a big deal is that it goes back to the saying I've heard before where restriction breeds creativity. When you're restricted
Mhm.
on what you can do, it forces you to be creative with the restrictions that you have. I think it can kind
Mhm.
of work in the same way where when you're restricted in how you can watch a show or what you can watch, it forces you to kind of just like, all right, I'm gonna buckle down and I'm gonna choose something. I guess you could call it like a
Mhm.
decision paralysis, right? Where
Yeah.
now we've got so many different things to watch, it's hard to
Oh,
make a
so many
choice
choices.
on what to do. So sometimes it's easier when
Yeah.
you're restricted on what you can watch because it's kind of like, well, I've got choice between this one thing or this other thing, and I really don't like this other thing, so I'm going to watch this one
Mhm.
thing, and then okay, man, it's not bad. And so, yeah, because like that decision process almost comes down to it's hard to make the decision on what to watch because you fear on missing out on what you're not watching.
Yeah,
And
and
you
what's
almost
crazy
get
is like,
no, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay, I think the thing too is in that sense where it comes to just the fear of missing out, right? And we fear making the wrong decision when in really like
Mhm.
there's not probably not even that much of a difference between what we're actually going to watch and what we're not. The difference in quality of what we're missing out on is actually not as bad as just us not choosing to watch something to begin with.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a different world when it comes to TV and the way that we binge watch things now versus having to wait. Like it's crazy when you think of how far it's come in such a short, like a relatively short span of time.
In
I
our
mean,
lifetime.
I remember, yeah, like I remember when Netflix was mail order DVDs,
Yep.
DVD rentals. You would get it in the mail and you'd be like, "Sweet, I got to
And
watch
block
this and then I can
and
return it at
Blockbuster
another."
had a chance to buy them, and they're
Ugh,
like, nah.
oh God. We need to do a whole separate episode on like Blockbuster
Oh
and Video
yeah.
Safari and
You know what?
and all
We
of those
actually should
places.
because it's kind of the same way, kind of the same kind of deal, right?
Hmm.
You're going to on a
Right.
Friday
It's
night or a Saturday night going to pick a movie at Blockbuster.
I was still doing that, not at a Blockbuster, but at a Family Video up until about 2 years ago. The one nearby me finally
Oh,
closed,
you
and it was
so
such a sad day.
we had a family video
It's
that
so sad.
actually ended up opening. We had a family video that opened at the old Blockbuster.
Oh, that's funny.
But it didn't last very long either. I think that was gone like probably
Right.
10 years ago. Anyway, we should probably move
Oh,
on to our picks of the week.
yes. Yes,
So our
yes.
picks of the week are going to be well. We were talking about just shows that we watched from before, and we decided we're just going to pick. What it ended up with our picks, it ended up being the connection '90s drama shows, basically. So
Hmm.
my show. Well, you know what? I started last week. You start this week with yours.
Okay. I couldn't remember who went last. So my pick is Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Okay. So first of all, have you ever seen Dr. Quinn?
My mom was obsessed with that show. I know how much
I
I watched it because again, this is a time where like we had the one TV. If I wasn't watching that,
hmm.
my mom loved watching that show. So when she was watching it,
Yeah.
if I wasn't doing anything else, I'd watch it with her. So I do know like some of I know what the show is about. I'm sure I've seen a few, but I can tell you like a lot of the details about the show. But I do know it's like Dr.
Yeah.
Quinn, Jane Seymour. You got Sully, who like they end up like getting married, I
Hurry.
think, and have a kid or something. And I know there's
Yeah.
also a lot of it because it's a lot about way back in the day, and there's also a lot about how it's about the Wild West, basically.
Yeah, it's about the Wild West, like the new frontier of America and all of that. And Dr. Quinn, Michaela Quinn, is a woman that comes from Boston, from like a well-to-do family, and she is a medical doctor, which obviously for the time, not a big thing. So she goes out to she moves west, and I want to say it takes place around Colorado, I think is where it takes place, but
I think I remember that
it's
too.
very, yeah, because they talk about like Colorado Springs, I think, at one point, but um, it ran for 6 seasons, I believe, from 93 to 98. It is such a good show. Sorry, I had to cough there. Um, so yeah, basically she moves out west and the whole show is basically just her trying to be accepted in this new era and bring, her education to the people of this town. But it is such a good show. It has literally everything. We used to watch it every Saturday. It was like a thing. It was Saturday night. We would watch Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman and Walker Texas Ranger back to back.
Oh, Walker, right, right. Yes, that's right.
Good old Chuck
Yep.
Norris. Yeah,
Good
they were
old
back to
Chuck
back
Norris.
shows. And I used to love Dr. Quinn because she was just like this sassy woman. She didn't take shit from anybody. People just were constantly terrible to her. And of course, she gets the hot guy, Sully, who he goes back and forth on like the Indian, Indian, God, listen to me. He goes, I'm like reliving the show in my mind right now. So it's one of those shows that I would like to say that the show holds up. Oh, like now, I would like to say that, but it hasn't. It's been a few years since I've watched it. I did binge watch it not that long ago, a couple years ago maybe. I like got the whole season or series from the library and watched all of them, and it holds up fairly well. I mean, there are some things that I'm like, ugh, but but at the same time, it takes place back in the day, so like, I want to say it takes place in 1800s, I believe. I don't know the exact year, but yeah, it's just a really great show. It has everything. It has action, adventure, drama, romance, sassy characters. It's just so good. Um, yeah, I don't even know what else to say about Dr. Quinn. It's just such a good show. Like I remember it's like a core memory for me for whatever reason. I don't know why it's that show, but I think I loved even back then, like seeing a woman doing things like that on television was just like so surprising and different. And that's a really heavy theme of the show, obviously, is like the fact that she's a woman and like every episode she like does something shocking. And she's like riding a horse in pants. And people were like, "My God, look at her. She's not even wearing a dress."
Yeah, I will say it was. I
It's
think
like
one thing was for pretty. It was pretty progressive for a show in
it
the
was.
'90s.
Yeah, for sure. And like her yeah, he ends up I'm not going to do like a spoiler warning really because it's from the 90s but she ends up with Sully, who is Joe Lando, who is still a fox to this day, I'm just gonna say. But I had the biggest crush on Sully growing up. And he used to go and he was kind of the middleman with the townsmen between like the Native Americans that lived nearby and like kind of that whole conflict that was happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like that all plays into it. It's just a really great show. Um but yeah, so if you haven't seen Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, you should absolutely watch it. It's such a great show and it holds up to this day. So like, yeah, we'll do your pick now because I
All
don't
right.
know your pick at all.
Yeah. So my pick is a show that I loved in the '90s called Due South. It is a Canadian show, but it actually ended up. It was on CBS. Actually, it was
Oh, okay.
pretty. Yeah, it was a pretty big. It ended up being pretty decently on CBS, but it ended up being a big hit in Canada. So the show was about a Mountie named Benton Fraser, and so the fun part about this is actually it was originally a movie. It started as a
Okay.
movie, and then they ended up basically kind of like making the movie into the pilot episode. And so The
Hmm.
basic pilot episode goes into that Benton Fraser, the Mountie, ends up going to Chicago following the killer of his father. And
Okay.
there he ends up getting assigned to a cop named Ray Vecchio, and they end up going like searching so basically the pilot episode is about him searching for his father's killer, but it ends up being kind of a buddy cop kind of thing where the two of them have to go out and find out, and they get into all these hijinks and stuff like that. But the main theme of the show, the main hook of the show, is it really is a buddy cop because Benton Fraser is your typical stereotypical Mountie, your do-gooder. Like he does everything. But did you watch the trailer that I sent? Because the trailer does a pretty good job of showing some of the comedic efforts because Benton Fraser is this straight-laced, by the book, do-gooding Mountie. Ray Vecchio is your typical American
Yeah.
Chicago cop. The kind of guy who's just like he's good-hearted, but he's your
Little rough around the
streetwise,
edges.
yeah, little rough around the edges, not kind of just like yeah, that's policy, but whatever, screw the policy kind of idea. And so
Right.
the contrast between the do-gooding Mountie and the streetwise American cop, oh, it's hilarious. And the other thing I like though, Frasier has a dog. Well, actually, let me clarify. He has a wolf. A
Okay, I
wolf.
saw the wolf or the dog on the cover when I was looking at it.
Yeah, he has a wolf named Diefenbaker, and the wolf is deaf.
Oh.
But it's hilarious because the
It's
dog,
such a weird, like,
the wolf,
random.
Diefenbaker has his own personality too. Like, and Frasier will talk with the dog. Like, he will talk to the dog, and he will argue with the dog, and the dog will give him attitude. Oh, yeah, Diefenbaker is basically like he's very much a supporting cast member in the entire series as well. And then it gets
That's funny
into
now that
like.
you say that. There is a wolf dog on Dr. Quinn as well, but his name is just Wolf.
Well, it's funny
I
because
was like, nice,
Diefenbaker is
creative.
actually was actually one a former prime minister, which is where the name comes from. But it is actually
Oh.
so it's kind of like your typical buddy cop drama series, but there's a lot of comedy in it. There's a lot of
Hmm.
they really play up the whole Canadian do-gooder versus American cop kind of a contrast, and but it does it very well. There are a lot of emotional beats. There's one two-parter episode where oh, what's her face played in that one? I can't remember. There's one lady who played in one of the two-part episodes where he plays Frasier's love interest, and it was a really emotional kind of beat to it. And then there's another two-parter episode where he has to take care of one of the diplomat's daughters, except she's like very much a rebel and ends up getting in a load of
Hmm.
trouble. And ends up having this almost like a MacGuffin thing where they follow this one thing that she ends up picking up, and these mobsters are after her, and he has to protect her. And yeah, it's very good. It is very funny. They really do play up well the whole aspect between the do-gooder Mountie, and especially since it parodies the both aspects too in a way. Like obviously, like they parody the Chicago cop more than the Mountie, but they parody in a way where it's kind of just like uh, where Frasier's do-gooding gets it's a little over the top, but he's
Right.
ultimately a good guy, and a lot of the stuff he does is kind of just like, yeah, it's by the book, but sometimes there are reasons why you do it by the book. But then they also show sometimes where Ray does things not by the book and shows, okay, sometimes there are reasons where you have to kind of go a little bit outside the rough edges a little bit sometimes. But again,
Right.
also in this show, they also do deal sometimes with some of the Native Americans and stuff like that in some cases too. Particularly
Hmm.
at the beginning, in the beginning of the show as well, where there's a lot of progressive kind of stuff in that kind of sense.
Right.
I don't think it's not. I wouldn't describe it as progressive as something with Dr. Quinn, but the other interesting aspect of it is eventually one of the recurring roles. Or actually, no, it wasn't recurring. Actually, it was. I remember it was in one episode in particular. Leslie Nielsen is in one episode.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and there's another guy. Oh, I can't remember his name now, but he ends up playing Frasier's father. Except he ends up playing Frasier's obviously dead father, basically the ghost of his father.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Gordon Pinsett. That's it. Gordon Pinsett plays, yeah, Frasier's father, and I think they go more into it in the second season, but where he basically just shows up repeatedly and basically just kind of like harasses Frasier all the time, just as a father would, right?
Right. I'll have to
uh,
check it out. I've never heard of
yeah.
that one.
But here's the thing too. So there were 4 seasons, but the first 2 seasons are the best ones, in my opinion. The second 2 seasons, so after the second 2 seasons, I'm not sure what happened, but they basically replaced the guy who played Ray Vecchio with another
Mm,
person. Um,
that's always weird.
yeah, but how they played it off was that Ray Vecchio had to go undercover, and this new guy is the new Ray Vecchio.
So weird. They're like, this is fine.
Yeah, and it's funny because like it's not necessarily bad, but it doesn't. I feel like he just doesn't mesh as well in a sense. Like it's almost like he plays a different character in a way, and he just doesn't
Right.
play it the same way that the first original. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch some of the, especially season 3 and 4. But yeah, definitely season 1 and 2 are, yeah, they're amazing. You definitely have to watch it. You will enjoy it. It's drama, but it's a buddy cop, but it's a almost like a comedic kind of buddy cop, but it does like have some serious aspects in there too. But yeah, Frasier is definitely very like a very progressive kind of person as far as that's concerned. Very
Nice.
like respectful, and it's funny because they play up that he's totally doesn't. All the women tend to try to flirt with him all the time, and he's totally oblivious to everything about it.
Right.
And Ray gets pissed off because all these ladies are going to him, and he's like, "What? What? Why do they always go to you all the time?" And it's like, "Buddy, have you seen how he treats them? Have you seen how he
Right.
respects them?"
That's so funny. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out though. That's the first time I've heard of it, but I think we are about out of
Ooh,
time
yeah. All
for
right. Yep.
today's episode. So yeah, that's gonna wrap up this week's episode of Inks and Lattes. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, you guys. We're gonna be here every Wednesday as part of the Dripping Creativity podcast, hosted by the amazing Chris Corvin. So if you have not subscribed already, please be sure to do so.
Yeah, and if you want more information about the Creative Coffee Cafe and how you can get involved, you can go to the website creativecoffeecafe.com. Get more info there. There's a sign up form for the Discord that can be found there as well. And if you have any news or project or anything else you'd like to share with us, send it over to submit at creativecoffeecafe.com. And if we can, we'll get it on the next episode. Thanks again for tuning in to Inks and Lattes, where we're spilling the ink and dishing out drinks. Have a good week.
Bye.